se těšil, že aspoň záznam nebude ani ten. Baba. Teď do toho bere super slaboučce, jakože tam něco je.
No, jako, takže ten gain je jenom dole, kdyby tam nahoru trochu je to hodně vidět, jo.
Bla, 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 bla. To s ty kamery. Přesně proto tady vlastně nemám víc. Ale to vlastně byla jeho chyba. Já už vidím, jak se s něma se všema pohádám, pošlu do piči a rezignuju. Protože hodně budu na ně, za to, že se na mě vysrali na poslední chvíli. fakt jim to jasné.
To vím, ale máme příklad,
Kde jsou kurva všichni ostatní?
on v hospodě sedí, no, a tam dojít.
Okay, not that many people came back from the lunch yet, but since our next speaker is Zacharias, is in a time press, we have to start. She's representative of the SMAC Fair. We are a fair organization which is fighting for same-sex rights in the Czech Republic, in the late years, especially for gay marriage. She's a member of the Government Council for Gender Equality, having previously worked as the secretary of this council as well, and in the past she worked for the Office of the Government of the Czech Republic at the Ministry of Labour and Social Affairs in the Gender Equality Department. And she was involved in the preparation of the government's strategy for gender equality in the Czech Republic for the years 2014 to 2020. She is a graduate from the Faculty of Law at the Charles University. So, Ms. Zachariasova, if you can hear me, I hope you can get on with it.
Jestli se slyšíme, tak můžete začít.
Halo?
Super, super.
Můžu teda začít mluvit?
Můžete? Díky.
Okay, so I will switch to English. Hello everyone. My name is Lucia Zakariashova and I heard with your colleague who I suppose introduced me as well. So I'm from the Art Fair Initiative, which is an initiative trying to push the proposals for equal marriage for gay and lesbian couples in the Czech Republic. And I say hello to all of you from here, from this cottage sauna where I am now, and hiding here from the rest of my family, with which I'm spending the weekend. So, we can start with my presentation, and I will introduce you our initiative, and I will tell you what is happening now in the Czech Republic concerning equal marriage. So please let me know when the presentation is switched on. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Excuse me, I will switch off my phone. So, please, the second slide, who we are. As was mentioned, we are Fair Initiative, who is pushing this proposal for equal marriage in the Czech Republic. And it is no like formal organization. It is informal platform of few organizations from the Czech Republic. It's Amnesty International Czech Republic, then it's Logos Czech Republic, which is organization of LGBT plus Christians or believers. Then it's Prague Pride, which is, by the way, Prague Pride Festival, big festival, LGBTQI plus festival in Prague is coming to happen next week. And then Mezipatra, Prague and Queer Geography is also there. So this is a platform of 6 organizations. And we started we formed this coalition in April 2017. So it is now 5 years we are trying to work on this topic and to debate, discuss with, on one side politicians, on other side with public, with the media, and to have this, I would say, public conversation, public discussion about marriage for gay and lesbian couples. We have some regional volunteers groups. We do a lot of meetings with people. We also have a petition for the politicians, and we now have around 150,000 signatures under this petition. And as I mentioned, we try to open this topic in media because we believe that it is necessary to have this public discussion about it, and it's not easy to push these proposals. So this public discussion is on one hand very helpful for the topic, and on the other hand, I think it's necessary in any topic which you want to change in the parliament by law. So next slide, please. On this slide, I just want to to repeat what we really want. To be really clear, we want to allow LGBTQI+ couples to get married. It is, of course, adult couples, and it is marriage with all rights and obligations, including parental rights, adoptions of children, because many times a lot of people are asking about this. So we want gay and lesbian to get married in the same way as hetero couples. Next slide, please. What is very positive here in the Czech Republic, public opinion is on our side, on the side of equal marriage. According to the various independent surveys, it is from 60 to 65% of the Czech population supports equal marriage. You can see one of the survey here, but we have many other surveys. So the problem is not in public opinion, I would say, but it is more in the parliament, for now in the lower chamber of the parliament. In another slide, you can see some more researches and some of our claims we use because we think that speaking about rights and equal rights is very important, but what is more important for politicians but also for public is to see, the real stories of people, how they feel it, which problems they have, especially families, gay and lesbian families with kids. And we think that people get married for love, and there's only one love. It has no hetero or homo version, so it is not understandable if there is no marriage for two people who love each other and are of the same sex or gender. Gays and lesbians are not people of different category, and for now they have only stepped into registered partnership, which is like separate category for gay and lesbian, and marriage is only for man and woman. And we still see this as some, different category of relation, let's say, and also it means for us that it's different category of people, and we believe that gays and lesbians are not different category of people, so they have to have marriage too. What is very, very important are, as I mentioned already, children in gay and lesbian families, and these children, according to Czech law, for now, they have only one parent, because it's not possible in the Czech Republic that gay and lesbian couples can have, common or joint parental rights. So it has a lot of troubles. For example, if the so-called social parent dies, the kid has no obligation to orphan pension. On the other hand, if the biological parent dies, it is big trouble, and it is the other parent who is taking care of kid and love he or her, or staying in the family, love the kid, is going to have the custody over the kid. So these are only some of the troubles of these gay and lesbian families, and this is one of the most important reasons why we want to have marriage for same-sex couples. We believe that it will not hurt anyone, but it will help many people. And we also believe that free and cohesive families are better for the state and also for cohesion of the society. Because as we say, cars are to be registered, people are getting married. So we can see next slide. And you can read this by yourself. I will not going to read it. But as I mentioned, we believe that what is very, very important is to show real stories of people and of families. So on this picture you can see one of the lesbian family with 3 kids. And what is very important to also say, we know from one of the surveys that 96 gays and lesbians in the Czech Republic believe that equal marriage will improve their lives. It doesn't mean that they will get married on the other day or next day after this change will pass through the legislative process, but it means that only the feeling that they have this possibility to get married is very important for them. And of course they can feel more equal if they have this possibility. So this is also very important. And maybe it's necessary to mention one other thing, and it is that it is not only about adult people, those who are adults now, but we have to think also about little kids who are very, very young now and don't know about their sexuality or orientation. Also for teenagers, it is very important that they will see that society accepts them. And for example, we have some statistics from US after they changed the legislation and they passed equal marriage. In next year, the suicides of teenagers, of LGBT teenagers, lower of 14%. So it is, I think, very, very big number, and it is very, very good reason to have equal marriage also in the Czech Republic, but of course in other states. Here you can see some differences between marriage and registered partnership, and this might be maybe quite new for you because, well, I don't know who is there on the other side in Prague, in Venuše. So here you can see these differences. In the beginning of our initiative, there were many people didn't know about the differences between marriage and registered partnership, and there are like around 200 differences between these two institutes, and it's in more than 100 legal acts. So maybe we can mention, you can get married in almost all registered offices in the Czech Republic. There are many of them, like hundreds, maybe thousands of registered offices. You can get registered and step into registered partnership only on 14 places, registry office in the Czech Republic. Another thing is, for example, and you can see it on the next slide, practical problems, that there is no common property for registered partners. Registered partners are not, have no right to have the common surname, and they have, if they Yes. And as I also mentioned, is it not possible now in the Czech Republic, and it is on the next slide, rights of children, to adopt child of other spouse or jointly adopt a child or to have joint foster. And this is, I think, the most important reason and the biggest problem in the Czech Republic now for gay and lesbian families. Yes, we can check another slide, next slide, all over the world. For now it is 32 countries over the world where they have equal marriage for gay and lesbian couples. Only in 2022 it was Switzerland, it passed in referendum, and Slovenia. It is the last one country who has it. Which has it, and it is more than 1 billion of people all over the world. So we can see that it is nothing wrong, and people live in these countries. And on slide you can see how it is in Europe. So it is the whole Western Europe except Italy, and I mentioned also there is including very religious Ireland or Spain. And you can see where they do not have it, so it's Hungary and also Russia. Yes. So please, next slide. Now I would like to mention something about like political support in the Czech Republic, in the Czech Parliament or the lower chamber of the Parliament. We are very initiative. We communicate with almost all political caucuses or all political parties and their members in the lower chamber of the Parliament, except SPD, which is some like far-right populists in Czech lower chamber. So we discuss with all caucuses, and we are independent, and we want to discuss with all of them, because yes, we have to have in mind that we need their votes. We also communicate with other politicians, members of Senate, and with others in political scene, for example, with presidential candidates, because there's going to be presidential elections in January 2023. Also with mayors and representatives from towns and cities and other. By the way, we have this, initiative called Fair Mayor, and mayor of the capital of Prague, Mr. Hřib, is also one of the fair mayors in the Czech Republic. How it looks in the lower chamber of the Parliament now, we have around 70 yes there out of 200 members of the lower chamber, which is not bad, but still, yes, we can say that it is not 101, which is, like the sure majority to pass the bill, but we are still working on it. And the situation is quite dynamic now, I would say. Yes, I would like to describe the situation now, what is now happening. First of all, it's important to say that the proposal for equal marriage was submitted in the lower chamber of the Parliament in the beginning of June 2021. And it was submitted by members of the 5 caucuses out of 7 in the lower chamber. One of the caucus which didn't sign the proposal was this SPD, this like far-right populists, and one was Christian Democrats. It's maybe quite understandable, but I would say that they are now in a quite like open public discussion about their position. Yes, and now we are waiting what will happen next, because the procedure in the lower chamber of the Czech Parliament is quite complicated, and the first thing is that you have to have you have to be on the program of the lower chamber of the parliament, which is first step, and then you have some discussion, and it's not easy. And by the way, elections to the lower chamber of the parliament were on the autumn 2021, and in the previous lower chamber, the previous, before the elections in last year, the proposal was also submitted there, but it passed only through the first reading out of 3 readings in the parliament. And because it passed only through this first reading, it was necessary to submit it again in this new lower chamber, which is quite a procedural, procedural question. But I'm mentioning it, and I also mention it because now we are waiting for equal marriage in the Czech Republic like more than 4 years, and in the last chamber before the election, we waited for the discussion and voting in the first reading 3.5 years. So as we can see, it can take a lot of time and a lot of work of our initiative, but also, and first of all, of the members of the lower chamber who are supporters of this proposal, and we very hope that it will not happen this election period. What is also important to mention, and why I also mentioned that Christian Democrats are now discussing a lot their position, is that 2 weeks ago, which is quite an up-to-date thing, the proposal to change the constitution, that marriage is only man and woman, was submitted to the lower chamber too. But there was quite there is still quite a big backlash in media, in social networks, and also public opinion. Maybe it's important to mention that Pirates is not under this proposal, and yet another thing I would like to mention is that Pirates are one of the biggest supporters of equal marriage in the lower chamber, and of course I would like to thank you, Pirates, for this support. What I want to also mention about this constitutional change is that the explanatory note to the change of law is not very good, and a lot of media somehow analyze it and say, well, this is not very good explanatory note. For example, some of researchers, which they mentioned in this explanatory note, distance from it and say they were from the US and distance from it and say, I don't want my research to be connected to a proposal like this. So this was one trouble. Another thing I would like to also mention is that this constitutional change proposal is same as they have, for example, in Russia or Hungary. And I think it's much more visible now in context of Ukrainian war. Czech Republic is also now holding presidency to the European Council from the beginning of July. And what they very happy say, our political representation, they say Czechia belongs to West. So I'm asking, do we really belong to West, where in all European Union, West European Union countries, they have equal marriage? So do we really want to belong to West? And there is one organization which is the main supporter and which pushed the most this constitutional change called Alliance for Families, and they are now quite in some troubles with connection to this ideology, which is also very well known in, for example, Russia. So maybe this is from me for the beginning. It was quite a brief introduction, and now we can start with your question if you have any, and I'm happy to answer them.
Do we have any
I hope
questions?
you all hear me, and I'm not talking only for this summer environment.
Questions?
Hello, is somebody there?
Když taky na chviličku zapně, ať víš, že tu jsme. Jenom, ať. Takže klademe otázky a...
Já jsem tady, že
Okay.
Hello, thank you for your talk. That was very interesting. I just invite you to expand a bit on both the title and the last thing that you said about whether or not Czechia belongs to the West or East, or whether or not you think that that framework is helpful in discussing this issue, or whether or not that dichotomy is not useful at all to put this issue forward in political context. Thank you.
Well, can you please repeat me the question, because I didn't hear it very well. I just catch something like East and West, but it was all.
Whether you think that the division between the West and East is a good narrative to use for actually addressing this issue, or not, that it's helping, or maybe it's just bringing into a different type of rhetoric that does not necessarily help to the question.
Well, I think it's important to show this, especially now in this Ukrainian conflict, where we see the differences between East and West more than before. And yes, so now we try to show that, yes, in the Czech Republic now there are 5 political parties in government coalition. One of them are also pirates, as you probably know. And there are 2 parties in the coalition who are like almost all yes for equal marriage. Then there are one party, Christian Democrats, they are, let's say, against equal marriage. And then there are 2 parties, and they are like partly yes, partly no. And the main political parties in the Czech government, civil Democrats, they seem like to be like liberals, but in real they are more like conservative party. But they are still using this rhetoric that we belong to West, especially now during the Czech presidency. So I think it is quite useful for the public to focus or not only on this topic. Of course, as I mentioned, we speak about real stories about families, and we speak about numbers, and we speak about political support, etc., etc. There's a lot of other things, but one thing which I think especially now is important to say is that you want to belong to West. So let's see how the West deal with this topic. And we have to say that they have equal marriage in the West. So we really want to be in this, let's say, like cultural environment or not? Do we want to be in Hungary, Poland, or Russia? And yes, I think it's quite helpful, especially now.
Another question? If not, maybe I will have one.
I don't know if you can hear me, but I'll say it later again if needed. Do you think it would be useful to pass a referendum law on this in the Czech Republic and put this to the vote to the public?
If it's not useful to use like referendum, the public referendum, general referendum maybe, let's say, possible to say yes or no to this question in referendum. Because imagine what you are, what you want to decide in referendum. You want to decide if gays and lesbians are like real people with real blood and with like real skills to be married. I don't think so that this is a good idea from this point of view, because like if you say no for equal marriage in referendum, what you are saying, like gays and lesbians are not people of the first category, they are people of second category, what are you questioning? So I'm not convinced that it is a good idea to decide this question of like personal statutes in referendum.
Anyone else? Simon?
Thank you. So I'm not Czech people here, so it's pretty new for me to learn about the struggle for the equal marriage in Czech Republic. What do you think, how difficult you feel to push and propose equality of marriage in Czech Republic? And second question, like what you mentioned in Russian, Belarus, and even in Hungary, they're very conservative to this, and even there's a resurgence of this kind of Christian conservatism. So would you feel actually European values is not always be liberal, and what should we do with this in European Union?
I know that there were two questions, but I didn't hear well, so please repeat it.
Can you shorten it a little bit so I can repeat?
Yeah, so what difficulties do you feel you face the struggle for equal marriage in Czech Republic? And also, what do you feel in traditional European value we can see that has Christian conservatism and populism happening, like in Hungary, like in Russia, like in Belarus? Would you feel in Europe, in European Union, that the values not always be liberal, and how do we deal with this in European Union?
Bylo to jako nějaký střet mezi tím, že jako část Evropy je hodně neliberální, řekněme, jako je Maďarsko, Bělorusko. Jestli lze generalizovat, že prostě evropské, že tohle jsou nějaké evropské hodnoty. Něco v tomto smyslu. Dobrá příležitost španělský příklad.
Okay, so maybe I can start with these difficulties and struggles, okay? So, as I mentioned, public opinion in the Czech Republic is not against us. It supports equal marriage. It's like from 60 to 65% of people in the Czech Republic supports equal marriage. And what I think the biggest struggle is in the parliament. It seems that lower chamber of the parliament and also Senate, but now we are lower chamber, so this is our main focus. It's like a little bit more conservative than the rest of the society. And what is also quite interesting is that I think politicians think that their voters are more conservative than they really are. So I think this is the biggest struggle, is to convince enough people in the lower chamber of the parliament to pass the bill through. And yes, we hear two main arguments against equal marriage. First, parental rights. I mentioned that it's for which really care for them. So this is one of the most often question when we discuss equal marriage with politicians or parental rights. And another thing is that a lot of people, especially in the lower chamber, have a problem with the word marriage, because they see marriage as only institute for man and woman, and it's very hard for them to imagine that there can also be married same-sex couple. So they are asking us, so okay, let's improve registered partnership, let's have more rights in registered partnership, but don't call it marriage. And we say, well, if we don't call it marriage, it's still like two categories of people. And as I mentioned, this statistic from US, this teenage suicide statistic, we can see that it's really important for gay and lesbian, for the, like the 100% of whole acceptance from the side of society that they can get married because they are able to get married. They love each other the same way, they can care for children the same way, so they can be married. But these are two main questions which we hear very often in discussions with people, with media, with politicians especially. So that's for the first question. And second question, if equal marriage is like European European value, let's say. Well, I think one of the European values is some open discussion about rights of, let's say, minorities, about rights of people who are in some different position than is the mainstream. And in this context, I think that to discuss equal marriage or marriage for all, as we call it, it is European value. And we can say that after the discussions in Western part of Europe, they support this and they say yes, we want to live in the state where gay and lesbian couples have the same rights as regard family law and as regard like position in the society as hetero couples have. So I think in this context we can say that we are very close to say that it is European value.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm kind of thinking that we might change the schedule a little bit, because we have, again, problems with the technology here, and it might be probably possible for you guys if we move the panel with you now to now, and bump to tomorrow. That way we'll also start with the movie sooner, and yeah, nobody will fall asleep watching it. But I have to call Alexander suddenly and make sure that they can join. The worst thing that can happen is that he won't be there. Slyšíte nás?
I didn't hear the question. Maybe can somebody goes to the computer repeat it for me?
Okay, round of applause please so she can hear it. Thank you very much. Okay, I will take a 5-10 minute break maybe so we can rearrange the staging a little bit. And
Já už se nemám asi zloučit. Okay, so bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's take back 10 minutes, hopefully, because somebody will come back again, like from lunch, those people who didn't yet. Then we move to the next one.
Technickou. Když ten tvůj počítač je tu jack někde? Ne. Teďka nebudeme to potřebovat, že ten tvůj počítač. Tady to další fona. Jo, klidně, ale že jenom jestli během příštího kluky, takže Iverson a že jenom kdyby během toho příštího počítač naležel tady, aby jsme položil na stůl, tak aby ten systém online nás řešil. Jo? Ale nevím, jestli nás nechá na tom předpojit. S vámi přeruším nahrávání a podívám se, jaká byla kvalita a pak byla se spustím. A hlavně se podívám, jestli mám v kompu ještě místo a něco smažu.